Well, welcome back, and joined to go through some of the day's headlines now is journalist and broadcaster Andy Jones and former editor of the Daily Star and regular on this channel, fantastic Dawn Neeson. Top of the morning to you. So, going through the papers, Andy, shall we start with a reflection on some of the manifest front pages today of the unfolding horror, the emerging horror of what's happening on the ground in Israel?
The videos, the stories, the social media that's coming in is absolutely horrifying. Stories of beheaded children, people dying in their beds, 260 revellers killed at a festival that was happening in the Desert of Peace, festival that's happening on the Gaza border, people in a kibbutz who are absolutely defenceless being killed. And again, this wasn't a political act by Hamas. This wasn't a military action. This was a desecration of innocent lives. This was an act of terror. And Netanyahu has left no doubt at all about that the pain for Hamas has only just begun. They will endure terrible things. The people of Palestine also caught in the middle. There are 2 million people under siege with dwindling food, fuel and medical supplies. And there is talk in the Times as well about how Hamas leaders, wherever they are, a lot of them aren't even based in Palestine, which is quite a bizarre thing, already regretting the kidnap of elderly women and children for the bad PR it's caused Hamas, which I'm not sure that was any surprise to anyone that they would get such bad PR.
Yeah. OK, well, let's turn our attention to other stories doing the rounds. And this is inside the Mail, Dawn. You've chosen a climate change story and how it could actually end up ruining the taste of beer.
This is actually the climate change story that makes everyone sit up and take notice.
Getting serious.
Just me. Exactly that, Martin.
Suddenly it's a thing for you, Martin.
Getting serious. Now, really all need to be doing much more about climate change. There's nothing like a cold beer on a warm day, but as climate change gathers pace, the rising global temperatures may mean your favourite Pilsner, Lager or Pale Ale becomes more expensive and less tasty.
Why? Well, because the hops?
Because it's affecting the crops. I mean, beer is the world's third most widely consumed beverage after water and tea.
Yeah.
Which I didn't know.
Yeah,
that's just Martin and me, by the way. I didn't know that at all. But the hop yield is basically not doing well because of the climate, and the yield is going down, and the hops aren't as tasty.
But the good news is climate change is making wine growing in the UK
Yes, it is.
even better.
Yeah.
And as a non-beer drinking wine lover, this is one climate change story that doesn't worry me.
Well, there's the other story.
It's not all bad.
Not that we're obsessed with alcohol, but I think, come on, sometimes we need a drink, don't we?
Yeah.
The other story going around is that the French squeeze out the Italians to be the world's top wine producers. France benefits as extreme damp weather and the spread of mildew has wreaked havoc on Italy's grape crop.
I might be showing my ignorance, but I actually never had Italy as being the world's prime ahead of France. I know French are known for their champagne, but when it comes to wine, I always choose French over Italian.
They produce more. I put my foot in it this weekend. We were in a restaurant and they'd run out of French champagne. So I ordered a glass of English bubbly and I said, "Oh, this is lovely. I prefer it to the French stuff, but just don't tell the French that." And he goes, "I will not." It was French.
Oh, no!
And I was like, "I'm never going back to that restaurant." But English fizzy is good.
You offended the French though, without even knowing.
That's why they're sending all the bed bugs over.
Yeah, in revenge for you not liking their wine. Andy, this story, do the James Bond story, shall we?
Well, I was thinking the renting story first, and we'll come to James Bond later on if that's all right.
Sure.
And this is the idea that the stress of renting is actually biologically ageing us. I mean, I don't know if there's a bit of a correlation there or if it's just kind of conflating it. But anyway, tell us that story.
You're a homeowner. This is why you've got good skin. And I'm sort of half renting, half buying at the moment. And this is why I'm craggy. So a study of 1,500 people by BODS at University of Adelaide says renters accumulate biological damage on their body at a faster rate than people who own their own homes. And this is things like because of the stress, cortisol, etc. And because of things like rent increases, no-fault evictions, having to rely on your landlord to repair anything, and not being able to put your own pictures up because you're not allowed to damage the walls. This means, and the state of flux that renters are in, 9 million people rent in the UK, which is, I think, a record we've ever had. It means that they are acquiring biological damage, they say in the paper, at a faster rate than people who own their own home.
I wonder, Dawn, this might come as something as a surprise to people who own their homes, who are seeing their mortgage go through the roof, and they're worried about losing their homes. I mean,
some of us are slightly stressed about the mortgage going up. And, you know, a lot of people who are renting, who are having seen their rent increases, are because most of the very small landlords in this country, they only own 1 or 2 properties, they're having to put the rent up because their mortgages have gone up as well. It's pretty stressful around at the moment, isn't it?
Cost of living, nightmare.
Yeah.
But the idea that stress has some sort of biological ageing element is kind of interesting to hear. I definitely got my first grey hairs after having children. I'm pretty sure this job's taken a few years off me.
I'm actually really only 28. It's just work that's ageing me.
But you know, it's not to be sniffed at, really. I mean, we gloss over it, but actually, you know, the young people are predominantly renters, and we talk about the astronomical increase in rents, not just in London, not just in cities, but in a lot of the towns around the country, up 25% on this time last year. And the percentage of people's salaries that's being spent on rental, the insecurity that comes with that, it is a worry.
It's not just the money either. It's the complete lack of control, the inability to be able to plan for the future. If you're being hit by mortgage rates or rent increases, you get a letter from your landlord, you get a letter from your mortgage lender, and suddenly you're absolutely terrified to open it.
It's interesting how, before the end of the show, we're talking actually to some first-time voters, some young people. No doubt housing and the stress of that will be a huge issue for them. But, Andy, this is the story I wanted to cover. Everything in the world will be hokey-cokey if we only had a black or a woman 007.
Oh, sorry.
There were 2 stories. You've just actually seamlessly combined 2 stories.
Let's have a hokey-cokey first on James Bond. We've heard it for ages, haven't we? Idris Elba should be the next Bond. Let's have a she Bond, a Jane Bond. This story's been around forever. Why can't we just stick with the original, a fella?
Yeah, well, Daniel Craig's obviously departing as Bond, and John Taylor, who's been speaking at a lit festival, John Taylor used to work for the British government in Moscow. He says a black or female 007 would boost recruitment for MI6. I don't think intelligent people of colour who would be applying for these kind of jobs are seduced particularly because of whether James Bond is black or white. I think what is more seductive is having brilliant new dramas like Idris Elba's Luther, which I thought was brilliant, him in that lead role. Things like Killing Eve, where you had women in the roles as sort of assassin and thief catcher or whichever. Brilliant women of colour, brilliant actors of colour in new specific dramas rather than just getting fusty old Bond and changing the lead actor.
Are you calling Daniel Craig fusty old Bond?
Well, I don't know whether really young people who might be the MI6 stars of the future are particularly seduced by James Bond anymore. I think if you look at the figures of people going, it's people of my age.
I don't think it matters what colour James Bond is, but as long as he's got to be a bloke, he's got to be a proper alpha male bloke. I'm sorry, I don't think he can be a woman.
But are we reading into this that there is a recruitment problem into MI6? Are they struggling to attract people to be spies? And if so, why? You know, isn't it the ultimate dream of a lot of the brightest and best in this country to go out and spy
none of us
for us? I wouldn't include myself in that bracket.
There's your answer.
But, you know, it's sort of supposed to be a glamorous role, isn't it?
It never entered my mind, but, you know, from a working-class East End background, they weren't recruiting from my group of kids. They were recruiting from Oxbridge, weren't they? So
yeah, but I don't think they are anymore, necessarily. But they are. No. It's just interesting.
But isn't that the point?
So the pay at entry level is that great, and also I think a lot of the jobs are desk-bound, data trawling on social media and the internet, rather than sort of flying into glamorous 5-star
hotels. Day one, going undercover in Cabana or whatever it might be.
It's an interesting point that you raised, Dawn, because there's never been a James Bond like, you know, where I come from in Nottinghamshire, the East Midlands. Never bothered me. We need a working-class Bond. No, we don't. James Bond is a sophisticated, debonair, upper crust, masculine, womanising, hard-drinking legend. And surely...
Actually making the job sound very attractive to me now. But no, it leaves the character alone. What's wrong with it? Nothing.
100%.
Yeah. Why should we rewrite it all?
Now, we do have the wokey-cokey now.
The wokey-cokey, yay.
This is another one of those crazy stories. A group of Morris dancers...
Yeah, I love this story. This is page 7 of The Sun. It's very funny. So this is the Brighton Morris dancing group that used to be called the Brighton Morris Men. But they've had a vote on the change of the name. So they dropped the word men so they can... And you know what's coming, don't you? So they can be more inclusive and include trans men and non-binary dancers into their largely male-presenting space. Right, there's still no room for women, though. You can't be a woman and go and dance for this Morris dancing group, but I could identify as a man and get in there, evidently.
I've seen loads of really good female Morris dancers.
But evidently,
really superb ones.
It's a very male-dominated thing. It's meant to be about blokes, and women aren't meant to do it.
Do women want to do it, is my question. I mean, I was at a country, whatever you call it, village fete over the summer. Talking about fusty old people. I mean, there were, you know, it was a particular type of person, and I thought, they look a bit... Sorry, I'm going to be offending some Morris dancers at home, but I did think, all right, go on. What's this?
It's a tradition.
It's a lovely tradition, but I've got no desire to get involved.
I can actually see you with those bells
Oh,
on your ankle, dancing around with a funny hat on. No offence, it's a great tradition, nothing wrong with it whatsoever, but, I mean, dropping the word men to be more inclusive, but you're still not including women. I mean, sorry.
If you are a woman and you would like to Morris dance and you are offended by the title of men in it, let us know. I personally am not convinced that many women are bothered about being included or not.
Have we got to the stage where the words
Maybe that's
men and
just me.
women are now offensive?
Yeah, I think it is. And this idea of having, Morris transers. I mean, in terms of like a niche within a niche within a niche, how many trans Morris dancers do you even well get?
Well, yeah, I mean, how many trans people want to go and be Morris dancers? I mean, really, it doesn't sound like the cool, edgy thing to do.
0.2% of the British population identify as trans, so what percentage of that then
would
wants to be a Morris dancer, which is already a very tiny minority of the population?
I can't imagine this Brighton Morris dancers group, their website's crashing with invitation.
Maybe
well, you never know.
A GBNEWS investigation, and Isabel should go undercover in her local fete Morris dancing troupe.
How to be ostracised from my new local community.
I think you've
never
already...
invited back.
I think you've already got the Morris dancing fraternity out there ringing their bells in anger.
No,
Isabel.
I'm actually a bit afraid to look at the GBNEWS
be a
inbox now.
backlash.
I'm really sorry. I do love Morris dancing, and I would be sad to see it go. I just personally am not bothered about signing up
We need
myself.
a Morris dancing Bond. This is what...
combine it all.
That would be a proper spy role, because, you know, the suave
Well,
Bond
he'd give himself
going
away all the
undercover.
time because of the bells. He wouldn't be able to creep up on anybody.
A transsexual Morris dancer of colour who's also in the Secret Service. There you go, every box ticked.
With an
All
Aston
ticked.
Martin.
Yeah.
All right, well, listen, we have to say goodbye. Dawn Newsom, on that note, and Andy Jones, thank you for reviewing our papers this morning on what's been a pretty heavy news day. We've been able to find a bit of levity
Thank you.
as well.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much indeed. Look, we're going to keep a close eye on all of those developments coming out of Israel this morning, getting that news of shots being fired from Lebanon. We'll have more detail also on the amassing of troops on the Gazan border being confirmed this morning by the IDF. Details in just a second.